I do want to bring in a good friend of the show now, Andrew Borene, who is with the George Mason University National Security Institute. He does have a lot of different titles, joining us now live. Thank you so much for being here with us here at this hour.
Thanks for having me. Great to be back, Josh.
And of course, I want to start by talking to you about really the goals here of Operation Epic Fury. We know in just about an hour, really 40 minutes at this point, we're expecting to hear from Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, as well as General Dan Raisin Kane, the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. What are you going to be looking forward to maybe hearing about this? What question or questions, and I asked you this last time, do you have that you hope maybe we're going to get answers to?
Yeah, I think one thing I think it's unlikely what we're going to hear is a lot of what would be kind of internal political debate about what got us here, and probably not going to hear a whole lot about internal political debate about what happens a month or 2 months or a year from now. My assumption is this will be a highly focused briefing on the progress so far. And I think we're probably likely to hear, certainly in the chairman's remarks, about how successful this operation has been thus far in neutralizing Iran's nuclear research capabilities, first and foremost, but also how successful it has been in degrading Iranian integrated air defenses. We've heard a lot in the news. We've heard other comments from other spokespeople from the military. But I think we're probably going to get more detail on what it means to have local air supremacy and what that can mean for support to internal Iranian actors who may be seeking to kind of support what comes next. The other thing I think we're going to hear a lot about is that Strait of Hormuz. My understanding is it is possible we will hear that the Iranian Navy is no longer operational. And I think that will be an economic argument toward reducing insurance risk premiums. We've seen massive spikes in the cost of shipping insurance, particularly in the Gulf region. So I think this is going to be a kind of a metrics-focused briefing, is my guess. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, sadly, we've seen American service members killed and wounded already. We've seen strikes from Iran lashing out throughout the region. And I think that people worldwide are aware that there is a very real risk of terrorism outside of Iran through their proxy actors. And there is also a very real risk, and this is one I'd like to flag, of very hostile Iranian cyber activity. Thus far, I haven't seen a lot of indicators that Iran has been using its full offensive cyber capabilities. But I spent some time on the ground in Albania a few years ago after the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps had attacked Albanian military and civilian infrastructure and really erased most of the data of the Albanian government and military. So I think personally they will likely focus on numbers. They'll focus on performance metrics about neutralizing the Iranian regime and Revolutionary Guard Corps capabilities and Navy capabilities. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I think we're going to get a lot of answers on how this is going so far.
And I definitely like how in-depth you go, because you're able to explain it to everyone out there. So we definitely appreciate your insight. And you were talking about the U.S. service members who have been killed here. We know this was an Iranian strike in Kuwait where all of this happened as part of Operation Epic Fury. 4 of the 6 service members have now officially been identified. You're seeing those photos that were released by the Department of War just yesterday, identifying, again, 4 of the 6. And one of them, as you see there, on the very left-hand side of your screen is Sergeant Declan Cody, who is from West Des Moines, Iowa. We actually have something. I want to play this for you really quickly before we get back into it. It's about a 30-second soundbite from his father and sister.
But one thing he did say is that, I haven't had a lot of jobs, but I've had jobs in the civilian world. And I've been over here for 6 months, and I work 12-plus hour days. I work 6 to 7 days a week. And he goes, I love it.
I still don't fully think it's real. I didn't think it was real when they told us. Because I just remember all of our conversations about what he was going to do when he came back. And so I'll just be sitting and thinking about it. I just really wish I got to tell him I love him one more time, because he was just so amazing.
And of course, that just shows, Andrew, what we're seeing here happen. We know that President Trump said, sadly, those 6 lives were lost. More lives could be lost as all of this gets underway. And this kind of talks about what Iran is doing as well. They are retaliating. They are launching strikes. And we're seeing them kind of respond here to not just the U.S. and Israel in general for what happened, but they are responding all over the world. So as far as their capabilities, you were talking about their military maybe being weakened or destroyed there. What kind of, I guess, concerns, what kind of precautions are being taken at these different U.S. locations across the world?
Yeah, that's a great point, and I just want to express my condolences to the families of all those killed and often outside of the headlines, those wounded. Oftentimes, especially in modern warfare, we have much higher survival rates after enemy action, and we often don't hear about the wounded, many of whom are going to carry scars for decades. And so I just wanted to kind of highlight that's a very somber moment. And with that, I'd also like to say thank you to all of our military members, all of our civilians, the ones you don't read about. In that reel you had just shared, I believe it was the father was sharing about the 6 months of work of 12-hour plus days. The preparation for Epic Fury did not start 24 hours prior to these strikes. The preparation has been underway for months, many months. The Americans and allies that do the preparatory work on finding precision targets, they work at computer stations. They work on map boards. They were relentlessly focused. And I can recall even before the invasion of Iraq in 2003, spending 20-hour days at a military base in the United States getting ready as early as late 2002 through January, February, and March in the Middle East in my case, it was the 1st Marine Division. But these are people that don't make a lot of money necessarily. These are people that are doing this out of service. They do what's asked of them. And I would urge all Americans to remember that our forces, when we enter a fight, the troops, the civilians, the contractors, the people doing the work are 100% committed to doing the research and the analysis to ensure that we minimize civilian casualties. That is a vast gulf between how Iran acts in war. And we're already seeing it. We're seeing Iran strike civilian sites. We're seeing Iran strike even European allies of the United States that had nothing to do with the initial round of strikes. We're seeing Iran strike Arab allies in the region. And it does fit the pattern of how this regime has been operating since 1979. And so I wanted to flag the heroism and dedication that for many months prior to the onset of this operation has been underway by our military and civilian professionals.
And of course, we appreciate that. And we are going to continue to learn more about those service members who have lost their lives, as well as those, as you mentioned, who have been wounded. And one thing I want to talk about is some breaking news that we have kind of coming in. I mentioned this off the top before I brought you in, but this is coming in from Fox and Friends, and Fox's Trey Yingst, a good friend of the show, who said, breaking, NATO defenses shoot down Iranian missile fired toward Turkey. That's according to the Defense Ministry. The incident marks the first time that a country like Turkey has received Iranian missile fire. How significant is that? I mean, we're talking about the first time that they've seen that.
Yeah, I think it's very significant. Turkey's an extremely capable military force. I believe it is possible, if Turkey feels threatened by an expansion of the violence from Iran to threaten their people, that could be, think of that as a black swan. Turkey's got a capable Navy, a capable Air Force, capable ground forces. And with that, I'd also like to add that there are other groups. There are the Kurds in northern Iraq and in Iran. I've been reading some indicators in some national news in the last 24 hours that some of the Kurds within Iran have been discussing the possibility of trying to help arm and mobilize the Iranian populace And so I do think, thinking about looking forward to the secretary's comments and the chairman's comments, my assumption is that those are things that are going to be outside of U.S. control. How does the Iranian population react? We do know and assess that I believe last numbers I saw were somewhere between 20 to 30% of the Iranian population is actually aligned with the clerical regime and their ideological worldview. That would mean 70% to, who knows, perhaps 80% of Iranians do not agree with that. And again, that underlines the absolute criticality of how intelligence-driven precision warfare means reducing civilian casualties, means not alienating the Iranians. And I think another key talking point I would anticipate based on Secretary Hegseth's past remarks and how I know our military operates are that there's not going to be a lot of conversation about another Iraq. There's not going to be a lot of conversation about another Afghanistan and putting American boots on the ground. I think, and I guess I hope there are questions, if there are question time from the media, about what does that look like. The United States is likely to have somewhat limited objectives here. No more offensive military threats from Iran. No more nuclear capability pursuit by Iran. And I think largely, again, the United States isn't going to get to direct what happens after the regime is degraded. But I think, there are some other indicators we could start tracking for how strong they are in their ability to resist a popular uprising.
And of course, we are getting a lot of information coming in. As I mentioned, there are, of course, a lot of questions, but we're talking about a situation where you can't release a lot. You have to keep a lot very close to the vest here. What do you think about the information that has been released? Again, we're talking about a second briefing here by the Pentagon, and right now they're doing a microphone check, but we're talking about the second briefing here, and we're only on day 5 of the situation. So based on your expertise, what does that say to you?
Again, we're at a critical phase of this entire operation. And I think, again, let's think about the troops and the civilians and the industry partners working real-time missions to protect American lives, to protect allied lives, and simultaneously to be aggressively degrading Iranian offensive and terrorist proxy capacity. So I think that the bulk of the focus inside of the military services and the Pentagon and our intelligence agencies is not about working to explain things at this moment. They are aggressively focused on pursuing the next target, on analyzing to ensure that a strike does not have collateral damage to the absolute highest degree. And so my assumption is a lot of the conversation, again, is going to be focused on the next 24 hours. The other thing I would say as an observation is it's hard for any American or anyone in the world to suggest that Iran and Israel are not at war with, the United States and Israel are not at war with Iran. And likewise, that Iran is not at war with the U.S. and Israel, and increasingly lashing out at a number of international partners who really had nothing to do with the first 24 hours of strikes. So I think we're at a point where regular updates to the American people from the Secretary of War, regular updates to the American people from the armed services themselves, who are not political, are going to be critical components because right now, we are at a phase where it's very difficult to get accurate information on the ground. It's very difficult to respond. We live in a world where information flows by the second across social media platforms. I read a recent statistics. Many Americans are getting their information from social media now rather than broadcast or platform or traditional kind of vetted media. So in many ways, it's critical, I think, even for some regular periodicity for briefs from the secretary at the cabinet level and from the chairman who is responsible for all of the uniformed services and the civilian employees of the Pentagon.
And we also want to make sure that that disinformation and misinformation that's floating around on social media and elsewhere is kind of clarified. So as you mentioned, it's great that they are giving the updates to, talk about what is confirmed and what is actually happening. I know, as you probably do as well, I have family and friends who will send me articles and say, hey, is this real? And I don't even know where it came from because it's absolutely mis or disinformation there. So again, it is great that we we are getting those updates coming in. As far as the situation unfolding right now, we're also hearing, of course, from President Trump. He has said at this point that they were able to get kind of this intelligence that came in. And we know that he confirmed, of course, that the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei had been killed in that first strike that happened on day one of all of this. Can you kind of go over some of what has to happen on the ground intelligence-wise to make something like this happen, to track down a specific person like the leader of Iran?
Yeah, I mean, I would add that it wasn't just the leader of Iran. I believe the numbers I have seen documented in the media right now and backed up, I believe, by some independent bodies, BBC Verify, et cetera, are that there may be 49 or more of the senior-most Iranian. Again, this is an ideological, clerical class of governance. It doesn't fit the American model. It doesn't fit the European model. It's a totalitarian regime. But the numbers of here, not just one, but 49. And that is a massive, massive effort. And it does not happen in weeks. It happens in months and years. And so in many ways, I think a lot of that information likely came from partners in the Middle East, probably predominantly Israel. As many of us know, Iran has been threatening the destruction of Israel as long as 1979. And the Israeli military forces and Israeli intelligence community is heavily focused on Iran. So we would call that a liaison relationship. And again, it's months and years. It's placement and access of brave human beings. It is extremely brave Iranian citizens and Iranian military members who shared information on a regime and on leaders, putting their own lives and limbs at risk, putting their families at risk, because that is how this regime would treat them if they were deemed a traitor. And so I think that we cannot possibly overstate the bravery and courage and diligence that went into this over a course of years, that when the moment came for the strikes to begin, precision warfare, precision-guided munitions were guided by the work of hundreds, if not thousands, of extremely brave people that we will never read about.
One thing I wanted to ask you here before I let you go, we have heard a lot of developments here coming in. It almost seems as though if you were to create a blog of sorts, you would have a new post every minute with some new information. So before I let you go, what has kind of stood out to you over what you've seen from the last 5 days of this operation?
Look, what has stood out to me is the scale. On Friday, I shared with some media outlets that my assessment was some limited strike was likely over the weekend after the markets closed. And I thought it might be restricted to nuclear sites, places like Isfahan. What we have observed is 2,000 strikes over the course of about 48 or 50 hours with precision munitions. I think it's early days. We haven't yet seen the full battle damage assessment of what that means for Iran. The very last number I read was 17 U.S. naval ships disabled or sunk. And so what we won't see yet is what that means for freedom of navigation, right? Does that mean that the Strait of Hormuz is effectively defended with U.S. naval presence at this point? That's a question I would like to learn more about. Another thing that has surprised me is a lack of focus on what's happening inside of Iran. There are thousands of Starlink terminals that are broadcasting video and information to the internet from a closed regime that tried very aggressively to firewall out and hide its murder of tens of thousands of its own citizens from the world. But we were able to see that because, again, brave Iranians, brave Iranian doctors, brave international doctors sharing information on casualty counts, sharing information on how horrific the scenes were. So I think what I want to learn more about over the next few days is what's happening between the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps and its conscript army called the Artesh. I think that there's a high likelihood that we could see some defections from those conscripts.
And again, you are looking at several different views that we have here, as in just about 20 minutes or so, we're expecting to hear from Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, General Dan Raisen-Kane. He is, of course, the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. They gave an update just a couple days ago. They are doing it again, and they were on time last time for the most part. So we expect That is going to be the case today. As you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, reporters are seated. They are ready to go. So the second this begins, we're going to make sure to bring it to you here in real time on Live Now from Fox. Andrew, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here and help discuss all of this. Is there anything else that you think we missed? Anything that you want to make sure to add here before I let you go?
Yeah, I think a lot of Americans are extremely concerned right now, and rightfully so. People are afraid because the nation finds ourselves at war. And I would just like to tell people to remember it's perfectly normal and it's okay. It's okay to feel unsettled. It's okay to feel some fear. And it is also okay to ask questions because we're Americans. And so I think I've just observed a lot. I see it across my communities. I see it across my family, people extremely nervous. And again, I want to justify that fear, but I also want to remind people that there are tens of thousands of Americans, military and civilian, working on this operation that they will never read about, that ensure that the highest fidelity data, the highest fidelity intelligence is driving these operations to keep American honor clean. And that oftentimes, and this is just my ask, I think back to my time as a second lieutenant prior to the invasion of Iraq, it's too easy to jump to conclusions. And there were a lot of differences between what was happening on the ground for those of us that were part of a major combat operation and what the American people and the world at large was learning. And I think a lot of times people forget that it is perfectly normal to feel the fear, have uncertainty, not have clear information. And I just remind people to please be gentle with themselves, be gentle with your families, your colleagues. It is a high tension time, not only for America, but for the world.
All right. Andrew Borene, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here and helping to break it all down. Of course, we're waiting on these comments here. Thank you again. We definitely appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate you.